Officer Kevin forced a dedicated single mother named Angela to leave her beloved home on a stormy afternoon, leaving her family homeless in just a few short moments. But only hours later, Angela's fierce fight for justice shook the entire community, uncovering a deep-rooted conspiracy that could ruin Kevin's career. How far will Angela go to reclaim her home and bring hidden injustices to light? Before we dive into this emotional story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you find Angela's story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more inspiring stories. Early in the morning, soft sunlight filtered through worn curtains, lighting up the small kitchen where Angela was busy preparing breakfast. The old wooden table, a chair with scratches she couldn't remember the origin of, and walls with patches of peeling paint, all bore the marks of a humble home full of memories. To Angela, this was more than just a place to live. It was a sacred piece of her promise to her late husband to protect and care for their children under this roof. As she spread peanut butter on bread, Angela glanced at the clock. She had to hurry, as the kids would be leaving for school in just a few minutes. "Mom, have you seen my science project?" Sarah, her middle child, called out from the top of the stairs, her voice laced with panic. Angela smiled, keeping her tone calm. "Check under the bed, honey." Her response was both playful and lightly teasing, the little humor Angela used to keep peace in their home amid financial pressures and life's chaos. In the living room, Tommy, the youngest, was still glued to the TV screen where his favorite cartoon had just lost signal. "Mom, the TV's messed up again," he whined, calling for Angela with a voice full of expectation. Angela held back a sigh. She knew that a pile of unpaid bills awaited her. Plumbing repair costs, electricity bills, cable TV charges. Her teacher's salary was enough to raise her kids and cover basic needs, but one small problem could throw everything off balance. Still, she smiled, tousled Tommy's hair, and promised to check it over the weekend. She saved her financial worries for those quiet moments after the kids left for school. Once alone in the house, Angela stood in a moment of silence, her hand on the wall. She remembered those first days when she and her husband had built this home together, fixing each small detail. Since his passing, the house had become even more significant, a place she had vowed to keep for her children. To Angela, it held the most beautiful memories and was the only place where she felt safe, where her children had grown up, and where so much hope resided. Angela adjusted her worn-out purse, took a deep breath, and stepped out the door. The house might not have been perfect, but to her, it was an entire world filled with love and sacrifice. Yet just a day later, that world would collapse. After finishing work, Angela drove home as twilight faded, her mind still drifting with lesson plans and the to-do list for the next day. But as she turned onto her familiar street, she froze. At the sight of a police car parked right outside her door, a man in a police uniform stood before her home, alongside a woman in a formal business suit with a cold, distant demeanor. Angela got out of the car, trying to calm herself. She gripped her purse tightly, approached, and asked, her voice slightly trembling, "Excuse me, what's going on here?" Officer Kevin Smith, a middle-aged man with a stern face, replied coldly, "Are you Angela Brown? I'm Officer Smith, and this is Ms. Donovan from Crown Realty. By court order, this house has been repossessed due to a legal dispute, and you are required to vacate the premises immediately." Angela was stunned. Each word he spoke felt like a nightmare closing in around her. "This can't be," she cried out, her voice breaking. "I've lived here for 15 years and paid everything on time. I never received any notice." Ms. Donovan stepped forward, holding a thick file, and handed it toward Angela with an indifferent expression. "All the paperwork is here, and the repossession order is in effect. Our company handled the dispute through legal channels." "But I never received any notification," Angela protested, trying to stay calm though she felt tears welling in her eyes. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking, as she opened her banking app, intending to show Officer Smith her monthly mortgage payments. Officer Smith crossed his arms, looking at Angela coldly as if she was wasting his time. "Ma'am, the decision is final, and there's no room for negotiation. You have 24 hours to gather any essentials." Angela stood there paralyzed, looking at her house as if she could hold on to every brick, every familiar corner. Images of her children flooded her mind. The evenings gathered on the old sofa, The wall art Sarah had drawn herself. The times Tommy would run around the living room. Wasn't this her home? All of this couldn't just end like this. As Angela stepped back, quietly taking in her home, she saw Michael's car pull up. The moment he saw his mother and the strangers in front of the house, he rushed over, worried. "Mom, what's happening?" Before Angela could explain, Officer Smith stepped forward, his tone unyielding. "You need to vacate immediately. This is a legal decision." Michael looked at his mother, then back at the officer. "This can't be. We've lived here all our lives. This is our home." He looked at his mother, his eyes a mix of anger and despair, wondering what could have brought their family to this point. Angela looked at Michael and then back at the house, her heart breaking. Faced with a nightmare with no way out, all she could do was hold her child's hand, trying to stay calm as tears silently rolled down her cheeks. Tomorrow, the peaceful world she had worked so hard to build seemed shattered right before her eyes. But in that heart-wrenching moment, Michael, with anger and determination, refused to let this injustice destroy their family. As Angela and Michael embraced, a few neighbors began gathering around the house, silently watching the heartbreaking scene. People who had lived beside them for years, like Mr. and Mrs. Martinez from next door, or Mrs. Lee from down the street, witnessed this small family's struggle and growth over time. Their worried, sympathetic gazes only deepened Angela's pain, but also sparked a faint hope that she wasn't alone. "This isn't right at all," Mr. Martinez said, shaking his head loudly. "They can't just throw her family out like this." Michael, still standing by his mother, looked gratefully at his neighbor before turning back to Angela. Inside, he felt a surge of anger and helplessness. As a law student, Michael knew that any property dispute should follow strict legal procedures, and no one had the right to evict a family from their home with a few dubious papers. "Mom, don't worry," Michael whispered, his eyes filled with determination. "I'll find a way. I'll check everything. This is our home, and we're not giving up." Angela held her son's hand tightly, sensing his resolve, seeing in his eyes the spirit of her late husband, a man who had once stood firm and fought for his family. Although she was filled with fear, Michael's strength gave her hope. Michael stepped back, looking directly at Officer Smith and Ms. Donovan. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he said firmly, "I want to see all the legal documents related to this repossession order." His voice was steady but laced with barely contained anger. "This is our home, and you can't just throw us out without a legitimate reason." Ms. Donovan smirked, handing Michael the thick stack of documents. "Everything is right here," she said coolly. "You're not a lawyer, so don't waste your time on this." Michael stared at the documents, trying to contain his anger. He realized something wasn't right. The vague details in the documents, their refusal to explain, all of it hinted that his family might be the target of an elaborate scam. But not everyone could simply accept this, and especially not him. "We're not going to let this go so easily," Michael stated, his voice resolute. That night, the Martinez family invited Angela's family to stay, and other neighbors didn't hesitate to help them. They brought food, blankets, and some essential supplies. Those warm gestures provided some comfort to Angela's heart, making her feel that, even if her home was taken away, her family still had an entire community beside them. But for Michael, this was just the beginning. He silently promised himself to uncover the truth and protect his mother and siblings from injustice. He began staying up late, combing through every line of the documents Ms. Donovan had provided, searching for any sign that the eviction was unlawful. Angela, though worried, sat next to Michael, gently rubbing his shoulder. "Son, I know you want to protect the family, but don't wear yourself out." Michael looked at his mother, his eyes glowing with resolve. "Mom, this isn't just about our home. I'll show them that they can't exploit injustice to take what doesn't belong to them." At that moment, Angela realized that it wasn't just her. Michael was also prepared to fight for their home. Their home might be gone, but Angela's family was determined not to give up hope. Michael and Angela embarked on their quest for justice, but somewhere the truth remained shrouded by a fog of bureaucracy and rigid regulations. But it wasn't only them who had to face the consequences of that day. Kevin Smith, the officer who enforced the eviction order, had no idea that his decision would haunt him for a long time. The next day, Kevin returned to the police station with a heavy heart. The usual sights greeted him: colleagues discussing cases, files stacked, waiting to be processed. Kevin tried to steady himself, reminding himself that it was just a routine eviction like so many he'd carried out over the years, and that he had simply followed the prescribed process. But for some reason, he couldn't shake the image of Angela's family standing in the rain, their eyes filled with helplessness and pain as they left their home. Every time that image crossed his mind, Kevin felt his heart tighten. The captain called him into the office, his voice anything but pleased. Kevin stepped inside, sensing the gravity of the situation as the captain placed a thick file on the desk, his face tense. "Smith, do you realize what kind of stir yesterday's eviction caused in the neighborhood?" the captain asked, his voice cold. A flood of calls from residents and neighbors of the Brown family, all complaining that they'd never seen that family have any financial issues. Kevin felt his heart leap in his chest. "Captain, I was just following procedure. All the necessary paperwork was there, and the realty company provided complete documentation." "Did you check it thoroughly, Smith?" The captain cut him off, looking at him intently. "This isn't just a stack of papers to skim through and follow. This is a family's life. Did you meet with them and see the pain in their eyes?" The captain's words struck Kevin as if he were being shaken awake. Each word, each syllable, weighed heavily, forcing Kevin to question himself. Had he truly fulfilled his duty? He couldn't deny that, while enforcing the eviction order, he had relied heavily on the realty company's documents without ever questioning or verifying further. He recalled how he had stood with his arms crossed, watching as Angela pleaded, her tears falling freely. Kevin felt a chill down his spine, realizing that he had acted so rigidly, focusing only on protocol without a thought for the family's real circumstances. "Captain, I'm sorry for not verifying more thoroughly," Kevin replied awkwardly, his voice dropping. "Smith, our job is not just to read files and mechanically follow them," the captain continued. "Your duty is to protect people, not to act like a machine enforcing protocol. That family is enduring a loss not only of their home, but also of their dignity. They may have lost their home because of your negligence." Kevin sat silently, his regret growing. He knew he couldn't justify this oversight by claiming he was just following protocol. He realized that his duty required more than completing procedures. It demanded compassion, awareness, and a commitment to protect people from injustice. Returning to his desk, Kevin reopened the file, scrutinizing each detail carefully. The documents he had previously skimmed over now revealed several irregularities: a signature with inconsistent ink, a legal seal that appeared blurred and didn't match official samples. Kevin tried not to think about the family's anguish, but as he reviewed each line, his suspicions grew. Each word, each stamp on those papers raised a question. Was he aiding a fraud? Unable to stand it any longer, Kevin decided to call the city's record office to verify the documents. When he got a response from an employee there, Kevin felt his heart sink. The documents provided by the realty company hadn't been officially registered, and the seal was likely forged. In just a few minutes, Kevin realized that the Brown family might have been victims of a real estate scam. With no other choice, Kevin decided to dig deeper. He reached out to colleagues in other areas, starting to investigate Crown Realty. Gradually, shocking details emerged. Crown had been involved in multiple lawsuits related to property disputes, often targeting single-parent families or elderly individuals, people they believed would be less able to fight back and lacked legal support. His professional instincts kicking in, Kevin couldn't ignore this brutal truth. What he'd discovered wasn't just a procedural error, but an illegal action he had unwittingly helped carry out. Kevin's heart ached as he remembered Angela's face, the tearful Sarah, and Michael's hopeful gaze. Had it not been for his indifference and carelessness, the Brown family might not have been forced out of the home they had cherished for years. With regret weighing on him, Kevin knew that if he didn't act to make things right, he would never forgive himself. He stood up, took a deep breath, and picked up the phone, determined to do whatever it took to expose this case and help Angela's family obtain justice. Kevin wasn't shy about admitting his mistake and handed over the documents he uncovered to Rachel, hoping it would aid in the legal process. Now, the real fight to protect Angela's family home was beginning, with each step carefully planned and executed by both Rachel and Michael. But Angela had no idea that this battle would open up so many complicated and challenging paths. Immediately after receiving the file from Kevin, Rachel organized a meeting with Angela and Michael. In a small room at Rachel's law office, they began examining every piece of evidence Kevin provided. Kevin was also present, his face full of remorse and determination to make up for his mistake. "I'll do whatever it takes to support you," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of tension. Rachel began the meeting by outlining the strategy. "We're not just going to prove that Crown's paperwork is fake. We'll show that this is a systematic fraud scheme. To do that, we need other victims and their testimonies." Hearing this, Angela felt as though she was being pulled into a battle far bigger than she had initially imagined. She wasn't just fighting for her home, but also representing other families who had suffered and lost. She looked at her son, Michael, and saw fierce determination in his eyes. They were both ready to face any challenge, and now, with Rachel and Kevin's help, they knew they had a chance to fight back. Rachel began reaching out to other families who had also fallen victim to Crown Realty. Through this process, she discovered many heartbreaking stories. Families evicted without a chance to defend their rights, elderly people pressured into selling their homes at a loss because they didn't fully understand the legal processes. With each conversation, the picture of how Crown Realty operated became clearer. One afternoon, Rachel invited Michael to join her in an interview with the Millers, an elderly couple recently forced out of the home they'd lived in for over 30 years. Sitting with them in their temporary rental, Michael could see the pain and shock in their eyes. "We've never missed a payment," Mr. Miller said, his voice choked. "But they came with these papers and said we had to leave because of a legal dispute. We had no idea what was happening." Michael held Mr. Miller's hand, trying to keep calm, but anger was simmering within him. He realized his family was not alone. This was a targeted attack on the most vulnerable in the community, people without enough legal knowledge to protect themselves. Each conversation strengthened Michael's resolve to fight for his family. It wasn't just about defending their home, it was about seeking justice for all the victims. The investigation dragged on for several weeks. Kevin, though no longer directly involved in Rachel and Michael's work, continued supporting them by gathering information and verifying documents. He also began looking into other evictions Crown Realty had conducted, discovering many similar cases with the same fraudulent tactics. He shared his findings with Rachel, adding to an increasingly comprehensive legal case file. Rachel knew that to build a strong case, they needed solid evidence and testimony from legal experts. She reached out to a signature and legal document analyst who could help verify the inconsistencies in the documents Crown Realty had used to evict Angela's family. The expert immediately identified suspicious elements in the signatures, ink, and even the type of paper used, all suggesting these were forged documents, carefully staged to mislead. With the case file complete, Rachel knew they had a good chance to expose Crown's wrongdoing. However, she also warned Angela and Michael that the company would likely put up a fierce fight. "This is a big battle," she said, looking at Angela seriously. "They'll push back hard and may try to intimidate us. But if we stay strong, we can create real change." Angela felt nervous but resolute. She had overcome many hardships in life and wouldn't back down now. The support of Rachel and Michael made her feel she was no longer alone in this fight. Just as Rachel predicted, as soon as the lawsuit was filed in court, Crown Realty responded aggressively. They hired top lawyers, trying to counterattack with sophisticated legal tactics. But Rachel had prepared thoroughly. She anticipated every move, using every piece of evidence and testimony they had gathered to defend Angela's family. Throughout the days leading up to the trial, Angela couldn't stop feeling grateful for having Rachel and Michael by her side. Every legal meeting, every investigation gave her more confidence that she would win back her family's home. On the day of the trial, Rachel entered the courtroom with an air of confidence, carrying the extensive case file for Angela's family. Michael and Angela sat in the front row, feeling that all their hard work over the past weeks had led to this moment. Rachel looked at Michael, Angela, and Kevin, giving them a small but determined smile, signaling her unwavering commitment. The battle had truly begun. The first trial took place under a tense atmosphere. Rachel walked in with a confident and determined demeanor, but she understood that Crown Corporation wouldn't let this case go easily. Every piece of evidence that Rachel and her team presented aimed to expose the deceitful face of the real estate company. However, when Angela saw Crown's team, a formidable array of seasoned lawyers, she couldn't help but feel anxious. She turned to look at Michael and saw in her son's eyes an unwavering determination. As the trial continued with intense testimonies and cross-examinations, Angela and Michael received constant support from the community and other families who had also fallen victim to Crown. After the first day in court, neighbors, friends, and even strangers sent words of encouragement, eager to help. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, longtime neighbors, not only provided temporary shelter for Angela's family, but also testified to her consistent payments, simple lifestyle, and lack of previous disputes. The courtroom battle stretched across multiple sessions. Each day, Rachel faced legal loopholes thrown by Crown's legal team, but her skills and experience allowed her to steadfastly defend each piece of evidence and every testimony. Every evening after court, Michael and Rachel would sit together, reviewing evidence and preparing for the next hearing. Kevin frequently joined them, bringing new documents he uncovered from other eviction cases. Kevin, though he had resigned, felt his commitment to rectify his past mistakes made him a powerful ally. He didn't just help verify more information about Crown, he also found similar cases where other families were wrongfully evicted. These files allowed Rachel to build a solid case around Crown's systematic fraud, turning Angela's lawsuit into a fight for justice for many others in the community. Meanwhile, Angela didn't just sit and wait. She participated in community meetings to share her story, seeking support from social organizations. She received encouragement from other parents, friends, and colleagues at school. Each time she stepped out of the courtroom, she saw old friends, former students, and neighborhood residents gathering to show their support. They believed that with the community's help, she could reclaim her home. One evening after court, as Rachel and Michael analyzed documents, Rachel shared an important discovery with Angela and Michael. We can use these forged signatures and fake documents to prove fraud. But more importantly, I've contacted a former Crown employee willing to testify about the company's methods for defrauding vulnerable families of their homes. Angela gripped Rachel's hand, her voice filled with emotion. Rachel, you don't know how much it means to have you here. You've given me and my family real hope. Rachel smiled, looking straight into Angela's eyes. You once gave me confidence in myself. I'm only trying to do the same for you. In the following days, Rachel, Michael, and Kevin continued gathering more testimonies and evidence. They found a legal expert on signatures and documentation who discovered irregularities in Crown's paperwork. This expert would testify that Crown's documents were indeed forged, from dates to signatures. The teamwork and relentless determination of the legal team began to shake Crown. Crown's lawyers realized the evidence provided by Rachel and Michael was ironclad and difficult to refute. However, they still tried to stall and delay, hoping Angela's perseverance would weaken. But they didn't realize that the solidarity of the community and the deep bond between Angela, Michael, and their allies only fueled their resolve in this fight. One late evening, as Rachel, Michael, and Angela prepared for the final trial, Kevin knocked, bringing a new stack of documents. It was a list of families who had been evicted by Crown in a similar manner. Always a foreclosure notice, always forged documents, and always targeting those who lacked legal defense resources. This is the final blow, Kevin said with determination. They're all victims of Crown. If we bring this list to court, we can prove this is a large-scale fraud scheme. Rachel, Michael, and Angela exchanged hopeful looks. This new file could be the final key to defeating Crown and protecting not just Angela's family, but many others from unjustly losing their homes. The next day, as Angela entered the courtroom, she felt a newfound confidence and hope she hadn't felt before. Standing beside her were powerful allies. Rachel, the once student who was now a dedicated lawyer, Michael, her determined and courageous son, and Kevin, the policeman who had transformed himself to make amends. The fight still had many challenges ahead, but Angela knew she was no longer alone in her journey to reclaim justice for herself and the community. Today, the courtroom was packed with expectant faces as the trial reached its climax. Rachel stepped to the stand with confidence, carrying with her the hopes and determination of an entire community supporting Angela's family. On the other side, Crown's team of lawyers stood in a row, their faces full of worry despite their attempts to look calm. The evidence Rachel, Michael, and Kevin had gathered over the weeks had started to shake Crown's legal team. They fully understood that if this evidence was accepted, Crown would not only lose this case, but also face the risk of a systematic fraud investigation. But Rachel, with confidence and thorough preparation, was determined to expose the whole truth. Rachel began her presentation by systematically laying out evidence of document fraud used by Crown to take Angela's home. She showed the court the forged documents and falsified paperwork Crown had used not only to deceive Angela's family, but many others in the community. Rachel's evidence was solid, backed by legal experts, each detail meticulously prepared to withstand any rebuttal. "Your Honor," Rachel said firmly, "Crown Corporation used forged documents and fabricated legal disputes to force families out of their homes. Ms. Angela Brown's signature on these documents is fake, and the details in the paperwork do not match official records from the property office. This is no accidental mistake. This is a deliberate and calculated scheme to defraud." The courtroom atmosphere grew tense as Rachel continued to analyze each document, each piece of evidence in detail. She presented altered paperwork, mismatched seals, and even signatures that experts confirmed were not legitimate. Crown's lawyers attempted to object, but Rachel swiftly countered, presenting new evidence they couldn't deny. The jury and judge listened intently as Rachel presented the final pieces of the story. A list of other families in the community who had been victims of Crown, all pushed out without valid reasons. Rachel emphasized that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a scam pattern targeting vulnerable families, like single mothers, the elderly, and families without the financial resources to fight back. Crown Corporation built an entire scheme to prey on these vulnerable families, believing people like Ms. Brown wouldn't have the means to fight the complex legal battles Crown manufactured. Rachel continued, her voice sharp and clear. Rachel even called a former Crown employee to the stand, who had witnessed and even participated in evictions orchestrated by Crown. This person revealed that the company forced employees to work overtime, fabricate documents to seize homes, and regularly targeted people without the legal knowledge to defend themselves. The entire courtroom focused on Crown's attorneys as Rachel finished her presentation. There was a moment of silence. A sense of outrage filled the room as the jury members began to grasp the full extent of Crown's fraud and ruthless greed. The judge sat in silence, looking thoughtful as he absorbed the gravity of the case. Finally, it was Crown's legal team's turn to speak. They attempted to present legal arguments to defend the company, insisting that Crown merely followed regulations and existing legal procedures. But their defense sounded like weak excuses compared to the solid evidence Rachel had presented. One Crown lawyer, in a last-ditch effort to defend his client, suggested that the paperwork might have been damaged in processing, but this only made their defense seem more desperate. Seeing the weakness in Crown's arguments, Rachel seized the opportunity to respond. She outlined each flaw in Crown's defense, pointing out that if the company were innocent, such discrepancies in documents would not be so consistent and repetitive. Every time Rachel spoke, Crown's arguments were shattered. As the trial approached its conclusion, Rachel introduced a particularly crucial document, expert testimony on signatures and stamps. This expert confirmed that Angela's signatures on Crown's documents were fake, and this wasn't limited to Angela's family, but was also present in many other cases. The expert further noted that the type of document Crown used wasn't found in the official records of the property office. The jury listened intently, and Rachel's words intensified the courtroom's atmosphere. Seeing all the evidence mounting against them, some of Crown's lawyers began to look nervous. They exchanged glances, seemingly searching for an escape from the disadvantageous situation. When her presentation concluded, Rachel looked directly at the jury, her voice resolute. "This isn't just an isolated case. This is a calculated scam designed to rob vulnerable families in the community of their assets. Ms. Angela Brown and other families aren't just victims. They are evidence of the injustice we must confront." Angela sat quietly in the front row, her heart full of emotion. Everything she and her children had endured, all the pain and hope, was now laid bare before justice. She held Michael's hand tightly, her eyes looking at Rachel with deep gratitude. She knew that no matter the outcome, Rachel and the community had fought tirelessly to protect her and her children. Finally, the judge announced a recess for the jury to review all the evidence and testimonies. Everyone left the courtroom in silence, yet filled with hope that justice would favor Angela. Back in their temporary home that night, Angela hugged her children tightly, her heart full of faith that the battle was nearing its end. Thanks to Rachel, Michael, Kevin, and the community, she felt she was no longer alone in her journey to seek justice for her family and others. Only one final step remained, and they would reclaim everything, their home, a place where love, hope, and justice would forever be protected. However, as Angela, Rachel, and the community awaited the final verdict, a profound change had quietly taken place within Kevin Smith, the police officer who had unknowingly played a part in forcing Angela's family into a desperate situation. Throughout the trial, Kevin could not stop thinking about his responsibility and mistakes. Each time he sat in the gallery, he was haunted by the image of Angela and her children being driven out of their home in the rain that day, turned away by his refusal to listen and help. His heart weighed heavy with regret, which drove him to change his life to make amends. One morning, after seeing news coverage of Angela's family, Kevin knew he had to act beyond just providing support at the trial. He wanted to do something to prevent other families from facing such injustices. Just as the verdict was temporarily postponed for the jury's final decision, Kevin formally submitted his resignation from the police force. He realized he could do more for the community outside the legal system that had hindered his own conscience. Kevin began planning to establish a nonprofit organization to support families vulnerable to unfair lawsuits and legal disputes. With his knowledge of the law and investigative experience, Kevin wanted to ensure that no other family would have to endure the pain of losing their home as Angela's family had. This idea became even stronger as he saw many people in the community who lacked the resources or knowledge to protect themselves against fraudulent schemes. In a final meeting before the court's decision was announced, Kevin visited Angela's family at their temporary home. Angela opened the door, surprised to see Kevin standing there, but his sincere expression and heartfelt apology made her open her heart. "Ms. Brown, I'm here to apologize to you and your family once again," Kevin said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I can't change what happened, but I want you to know that it changed me completely. I've resigned and am determined to dedicate my life to helping families like yours." Angela looked at him, silent for a moment, then placed her hand on his shoulder. "Everyone can make mistakes, Kevin. What matters is that you realized it and are trying to make it right." "Thank you for giving me a chance to make amends," Kevin replied, his eyes full of determination. "I will always be here if your family needs anything, and I will fight to ensure that no one else goes through the same ordeal." In the final days before the verdict, Kevin poured his heart into supporting his new organization. He sought help from former colleagues, community friends, and social organizations. Together, they built a legal support and educational program to help vulnerable families understand their rights and learn how to deal with deceitful tactics from bad actors. The day of the final verdict arrived, and the courtroom was filled with people there to support Angela. The entire community had risen alongside her family, and Kevin was also present, quietly sitting in the back row, hoping that what he had done could help Angela's family gain justice. The judge entered, and the courtroom went silent. He began reading the court's decision, each word deeply impacting everyone present. After reviewing all evidence and testimonies, the judge declared, "The court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Angela Brown." Cheers and applause erupted in the courtroom. Angela couldn't hold back tears as she heard the verdict. Rachel, standing next to her, held her hand tightly, smiling proudly as justice triumphed. The judge continued, "The actions of Crown Corporation were not only fraudulent, but demonstrated an organized scam pattern. The court orders Crown Corporation to return the Brown family's property in full and pay $250,000 in damages for emotional distress, temporary housing costs, and other losses." The courtroom erupted with joy and gratitude. Angela hugged Michael and her children tightly, tears of happiness and relief streaming down. Rachel also embraced Angela, proud to see their efforts finally rewarded. Meanwhile, at the back of the courtroom, Kevin smiled quietly. Though he was not directly responsible for the verdict, he knew that his transformation had contributed to this outcome of justice. His journey had only just begun. But today, seeing Angela's family reclaim their home, He realized it was the motivation he needed to continue on this new path. After the trial, Angela and her children left the courtroom, not in despair as they had been on the day they were evicted, but in pride and boundless gratitude. She looked back at Rachel, Michael, and Kevin, those who had stood by her to achieve this day. They all understood that this journey wasn't just about reclaiming a home, but about defending the rights of all who are vulnerable in society. On the way home, Angela held her children's hands tightly, feeling the warmth of the home she had fought to protect. This home was now more than a house. It was a symbol of resilience, love, and community unity. As Angela opened her door once more, she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Everything in the house felt familiar and closer than ever. She stepped inside, seeing every scratch on the floor, every mark on the walls, all welcoming her and her children back to their safe place. On their first day back, neighbors gathered to host a small celebration in Angela's honor. The entire neighborhood seemed happier than ever because Angela's victory wasn't just hers. It was a major win for the entire community and for anyone who had faced injustice without a voice. Rachel stood beside Angela, smiling as she saw her former teacher's house finally return to its rightful place. "Ms. Brown," Rachel said, her eyes brimming with emotion, "thank you for teaching me about justice and courage. Standing by you in this fight has been the greatest honor of my life." Angela embraced Rachel, her heart swelling with pride. "No, I'm the one who should thank you, Rachel. Without you, my children and I wouldn't have had today." She smiled, looking at Michael and her children. "This battle didn't just give us a home back, it helped us realize that justice always exists as long as we never give up." In the following days, Kevin officially established the nonprofit he had envisioned, a legal aid organization for families vulnerable to unjust disputes. With the community's support, Kevin's organization gradually became a place where families could turn to when facing complex legal issues. And each time he successfully helped a family, he thought of Angela and her children, the ones who inspired him to change and find new meaning in his life. Time passed and Angela's story became a legacy. Her school hosted an honorary event where colleagues and students expressed their admiration for her. Angela's students, who had once been children, now better understood the meaning of justice, perseverance, and kindness. Some of them even wanted to become lawyers to stand up for the underprivileged, just as Angela had. One day, Angela received a call from the city's mayor, inviting her to a signing ceremony for a new law protecting home ownership rights for families with special circumstances. The law, named after her, the Brown Home Protection Act, aimed to prevent fraud and protect families like hers. When she signed the law, she represented not just herself, but everyone who had ever faced the fear of losing their beloved home. Feeling the profound impact of this fight, Angela knew she had done something meaningful not only for her family, but also for countless others. She had stood up not only to protect her home, but to bring a brighter future to her community. In the late afternoon that day, as the evening sunlight shone into the living room, Angela sat quietly at her familiar wooden table, looking around her home. Outside the window, Michael and his siblings played in the yard, their smiles full of joy and peace. She knew that through all the challenges, they hadn't just returned to a house. They had found faith again, belief in justice and the strength of love. Angela smiled, her heart filled with serenity. She had come home, not just physically, but with a stronger and more resilient spirit than ever. Her battle had created a lasting legacy for her family and community, and from there the flame of justice would continue to spread, lighting the way for those searching for their own safe place. And so, Angela's journey to reclaim her home ended in the victory of justice, love, and perseverance. Their story is not only that of one family, but also a reminder of the strength of community, of unwavering determination against injustice, and of the commitment to protect what matters most. Angela, Michael, and those who stood by them became proof that justice prevails, and each of us has the power to create positive change for ourselves and our community. If you find this story meaningful and inspiring, please subscribe to our channel for more stories of humanity. Each subscription not only helps spread these values, but also motivates us to continue sharing heartfelt and impactful stories. Together, we can create a positive community and spread love.